Is it time for the housing market to slow down? Owning a house is the dream of any working professional. After all, it is the place one can call their own, a place that gives them the comfort of home. Then how difficult it has become to actualize that dream in today's market? Hello and welcome to the channel. We're going to be looking at the housing market and the recent trends in the market that may be cause for concern. It has been noted by those of you who have been keeping track of the housing market that those prices have shot up 34% in the last 2 years. There has been a rise in demand, and the presence of such levels of housing combined with the lack of supply required to satiate. The United States could be placed at a crucial juncture in terms of its housing. There is an upsurge of properties are coming onto the market. It would have been a piece of great news in a market where demand has always been high until recently. Now the rise in properties coming into the market has coincided with the slowing down of demand for these properties. This can mean prices could level off and, depending on the demographics, even start to decline. Before we jump the gun, prices are still rising. The median existing home sales price reached an all-time high in April 2022 of $391,200, up 14.8% from a year ago, according to data released on May 19, 2020 by the National Association of Realtors, NAR. There are still signs that indicate this prompt pace of rising demand for homes may be slowing after the cost of a month mortgage payment for a median price has jumped by 27%. This happened after a year passed since the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates in March and May. Existing home sales were down for the third straight month in April, falling 2.8% according to the NAR. Real estate brokerage Redfine has said that in April, just 60.7% of the home offers written by its agents faced competing offers, compared to 63.4% a month earlier and 67.4% a year ago. A survey from the National Association of Home Builders showed constructors' confidence in the market for newly built single-family homes fell to the lowest reading since June 2020. The Census Bureau said on May 17th that the number of permits issued for new single-family homes fell 4.6% in April from the previous month. The slowdown in demand comes as the U.S. housing market is finally seeing a surge of newly built properties after more than a decade of caution from home builders scarred by the Great Recession. The government predicts that there will be more units completed this year than in any year since 2006. There were a record of number of single-family units under construction in April was 815,000, the most since November 2006. There are currently 826,000 multifamily units under construction, the highest level since 1974 according to the Census Bureau. There are an enormous number of housing units under construction according to Bill McBride, the author of blog Calculated Risk, who in 2005 correctly predicted that housing bubble and has since become one of the most reputable sources for the housing market analysis. He has said that housing price growth is going to slow and may flatten by the end of the year, as demand wanes and more supply comes onto the market. There is currently about 2 months of supply of houses on the market in the US, meaning it would take 2 months for all the homes available to sell given current conditions, but he predicts that prices will start if that amount reaches about 6 months worth. Some of these completions have been delayed by supply chain issues that are currently being resolved. In addition, more housing units are under construction as progressive cities and states relax restrictions on building to tackle the affordability crisis. The state of California, for instance, has essentially banned single-family zoning and made it easier for cities to add multifamily housing. Although these measures went into effect in November, they could start to slowly show up in some neighborhoods as existing homeowners build accessory dwelling units called ADUs in their yards to increase supply. Oregon essentially got rid of single-family zoning in 2019, and a similar law is moving forward in Maine. States and cities are also removing requirements that homes are built with parking spaces, which also allows for increased density of properties. A housing bubble. Most experts have said that we're not in a bubble. There are lending standards that are different for one thing. He likens the current period to the early 1980s when interest rates jumped and home prices declined when adjusted for inflation. The most likely scenario today, he says, is the same home prices will stagnate in today's dollars, but that means they slip a little when adjusted for inflation. Higher interest rates aren't the only reason demand is tapering. In 2015, it was predicted that the 2020s would see a big boost in demand as a large cohort of Americans were going to move into the 30 to 39 age group, which is the best age capacity to buy a home. The census data, on the other hand, is indicating that there are fewer people in that age group than previously estimated, possibly because of the excess of deaths attributable to the opioid epidemic and the COVID-19 pandemic. The demographics are solid. They aren't as good as what was predicted originally in 2015, and we don't know how much worse they are after the heavy toll taken by these events. Whether companies keep allowing their employees to work remotely will also impact regional supply and demand. A recently published study says that remote work accounts for half of the home price growth since the late 2019, since people moved to areas where they wanted to live, but where there was limited supply. If companies start reversing policies allowing workers to work remotely, demand could slow in many housing markets. Aging populations. Some analysts are more pessimistic about how much demographics will affect demand in the US, which in 2021 saw the slowest rate of population growth since the country's founding. The US is aging. There are also concerns of the fertility rate is declining and immigration is also slumped. All of these now have contributed to the current housing market being overbuilt for the population in the US. US population trends are similar to what happened in Japan 2 decades ago. In Japan, the population started shrinking in 2011, and last year the country experienced its biggest drop on record. In the US, the births have been below the rate required to keep population levels. Further, at the same time has also been when there has been a gross reduction in the immigration rate. Immigration has rapidly been slowing since 2016. Net international migration added just 247,000 people to the US population last year, less than a quarter of what it did in 2015. The first baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964 are about to turn 80, which means they'll start to either pass away or sell their homes and downsize, which adds inventory to the market. US builders have treated these demographic shifts differently than Japanese builders did. Even before Japan's population leveled off and then started shrinking, developers there slowed the pace at which they were building housing. In Japan, the new home building fell from 14 million between 1990 and 2000 to 11 million between 2000 and 2010, and declined further to 9.1 million between 2010 and 2020. While Japanese builders took population declines into account when planning, US builders have decided to ignore it. Everybody on the development side is looking backwards. The belief is that there has always been at least 1.5 million housing start every year, and that is where the planning must get back. The issue here is that such a belief completely ignores the fact that the demographic underpinning is different. Builders in the US have convinced themselves that there's a huge supply shortage. Markets including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Detroit, and Cleveland have all posted below average population growth in each of the last 11 years, which is suggesting that demand could taper even more in those areas. Nationwide, the pace of household formation has long been slowing, a reflection of the slowing birth rate, aging population, and later age at which people marry and have children. Household formation measures both when people join together and live in a home and when people die or move out of home. While there were 13.7 million new households formed between 1990 and 2000, that number has fallen to 9.5 million between 2010 and 2020. The decline in house prices. Housing prices could fall as soon as 2023 because builders have been overbuilding based on US demographics. Research is saying there's something significantly negative coming in regards to prices. Of course, changes in demand are all a matter of public policy taken by the government. The Federal Reserve has increased interest rates, which have slowed down the demand considerably. The US also has stopped welcoming as many immigrants beginning from 2016 onwards, which also tempered with demand. It can change if Congress passes a change to immigration laws. Then it remains to be seen whether such a step will take place. This is all, folks. This is our take on what the recent slowdown in demand and increase can mean to the housing market. If you enjoyed the video, and please like and also subscribe to get more such videos. Press the bell icon to get updated about our videos.